When I was a kid, I used to love watching a little cartoon called Captain N, the Game Master. These days, I think the show's atrocious. I certainly don't recommend it. It doesn't hold up. Although, apparently my DVD copy is super rare and out of print, so maybe I should sell it on eBay first before telling people to pass on the show. Anyway, in case you're unaware, I'll briefly explain the premise of Captain N, along with a tiny bit of history behind the franchise. In issues number 3 and 4 of Nintendo Power, magazine editor Randy Studdard produced a two-part short story called Captain Nintendo. Now this thing is very different from the cartoon show. It involves an entirely different cast of characters. Readers were introduced to 3 fictional employees who worked at Nintendo of America headquarters: Maxwell Powers, Brett Randalls, and Tara Bates. One day, while this trio was on the job, a magic box of microchips exploded, and as the story text says, most of them embedded themselves deep into Brett's skin. I guess this bizarre event gave Brett superpowers, for lack of a better description, and thus Captain Nintendo was born. Now, according to Wikipedia, in addition to writing this story, Studdard also crafted a formal proposal for Nintendo itself, hoping the company would turn this simple idea into the next big childhood craze. I'm sure Studdard envisioned making tons of money off this concept, licensing toys, cartoons, games, and so on, but unfortunately for him, that's not what happened. To quote Wikipedia, Nintendo of America Incorporated later decided to follow Studdard's ideas and create a cartoon series, opting neither to credit nor to compensate its creator. Of course, a dirty move like that isn't surprising considering the way Nintendo typically conducts business, but anyway. The cartoon that allegedly emerged from the fiery ashes of Studdard's burnt hopes and dreams became known as Captain N, the Game Master. There was also a short-lived series of comic books published by Valiant bearing the same name. In these new adaptations of the story, Kevin Keene was the titular hero in question. Now I want to make it perfectly clear that I am not an expert on Captain N. I've got a literal shit ton of useless knowledge stuck in my brain, but specific details about this franchise are not included in that information. I don't know if the show ever specifically mentions Kevin's place of origin, but in the comics he's identified as a resident of Northridge, California. So I suppose the N on his varsity jacket actually stands for Northridge, not Nintendo. That's a strange revelation. It kind of feels like a bit of false advertising if you ask me. One day, while playing Nintendo, Kevin was sucked into his television via the ultimate warp zone. He then found himself in Videoland, populated by Nintendo brand video game characters, most notably Megaman, Kid Icarus, and Simon Belmont. I'll address these monstrosities more in a minute. They're just nothing like their true cartridge counterparts. Kevin soon learns that Videoland is under siege by Metroid's Mother Brain, along with her assorted gang of video game villains. Mother Brain wants to claim the throne within the Palace of Power and become Queen of Videoland, but in order to do that, she needs to dethrone the current ruler, Princess Lana. I don't recall where Lana's parents disappeared to, or why she never took the title of Queen herself, but whatever. Just think of the whole thing like a Game of Thrones type situation, only it's really, really stupid. Meanwhile, it's worth noting that Princess Lana is a complete fabrication. She wasn't derived from any pre-existing video game property. I guess the show writers didn't want Kevin pursuing any other hero's girl. Though in the comics, I hear he did try to get down and dirty with Samus Aran on occasion. Man, if I ever find out Samus banged Kevin, I'm gonna lose a lot of respect for her. And she was already skating on thin ice after that whole Other M debacle. Kevin was brought to Videoland in order to protect Princess Lana and fight Mother Brain. The ultimate warp zone was opened by a sentient power glove, which said, and I quote, "The legend of Videoland foretells of a young warrior from another land who shall warp into our world and lead you to victory. He is Captain N, the Game Master." I guess that stupid glove was fooled by the N on Kevin's jacket too. You see, even though I was once a fan of the show, I never understood what made Kevin so damn special. He would occasionally identify familiar game titles and claim they were his specialty, but to be honest, he didn't seem especially skilled. He never held any records at Twin Galaxies, for example. We, the audience, were shown virtually zero proof of his accomplishments. All we know for sure is that he can reach King Hippo and Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. It's not exactly what I'd call a Billy Mitchell level of greatness. Anyway, as much as I've been ragging on this IP for being quite ridiculous, I would like to see it come back in some form. Not a reboot per se, but more like a reimagined continuation of the series. If it were up to me, I'd set this new show in modern times. The year is 2016. Kevin is in his late 30s or early 40s. His joints are stiff. He's in constant pain. He has bad eyesight, slower reflexes, and he's grown significantly less patient when it comes to dealing with difficult video games. Hell, throw in a serious love of beer that probably borders on alcoholism, and he's basically turned into me. Poor bastard. Kevin's equipment is all beaten and battle-worn. His light gun doesn't work anymore because that technology died with the times. The buttons on his controller belt buckle are loose and unresponsive. Ultimately, what I'm driving at here is that life isn't all fun and games like it used to be. Now, I'm not one of those dicks who demands all my entertainment be dark and gritty. For example, I hate that modern-day Superman is a gloomy, joyless mess. But sometimes that approach works. This Captain N revival may just be one of those times. I want to see a grimy, disgusting video land that's mostly changed for the worse. Territories have become glitchy and unsafe or just plain inaccessible. Kevin's virtually powerless to fix things because he's not a skilled technician, and sadly, Q-tips and Brasso are in short supply. Meanwhile, through the passage of time, the ravages of age, etc., Kevin's friends have either moved on or evolved. Much like real life, nothing ever stays the same. Let's take a look at the N-Team members today, starting with Megaman. Who is this clown? Seriously, this thing is not Megaman. It's some weirdo cyborg Cabbage Patch doll. Hey, Deke Entertainment, when the box art for Mega Man 1 looks more legit than your creation, you've completely failed as animators. Let's just say this goofy pile of gears was recycled for scrap, and maybe recruit Shovel Knight as a proper replacement instead. Speaking of outdated technology, Gameboy was introduced to the Captain N audience as a sentient machine in Season 2. Now, I loved Gameboy as a kid, the product, not the character. Unfortunately, my parents were poor, so I had to make do with shitty Tiger handheld games instead. I also owned an official Zelda wristwatch at one point, but still, my portable gaming situation was pitiful at best. Anyway, Gameboy, the cartoon character, was nothing more than a cheap marketing ploy. His presence turned the Captain N show into an even bigger commercial than it already was. The Fred Savage movie The Wizard was more subtle with its product placement. What's worse is that Gameboy tried to hijack the show, much like Slimer did in the real Ghostbusters. His every attempt to steal the spotlight irritated me to no end. In this new Captain N revival I'm proposing, we're just going to cut Gameboy out entirely, and we'll reserve blatant merchandising for commercial breaks only. I've mentioned my nostalgic feelings for Kid Icarus in the past. That NES game really captivated me as a child. I'd love to see Kid Icarus return to television once again, only I'd make him a more honest representation of the video game character himself, and I'd start by calling him Pit, because that was his actual name. I'd also get rid of his bizarre little speech impediment, where he felt a compulsion to lengthen words with a pointless suffix. Simon Belmont was an early mainstay of the Castlevania franchise, but eventually he became ancient history, surpassed by other heroes, some of which stem from his own bloodline. I'd do the same here, replace him with any other vampire hunter available. Cartoon Simon was a strange anomaly, a pompous womanizer who acted extremely feminine. Imagine hanging out with a gay man who constantly bragged about crushing pussy. It wouldn't make any sense. Now, I have absolutely nothing against gays. I just hated Cartoon Simon because he was totally obnoxious. It's time to close the coffin on this dark chapter of the Belmont clan and maybe continue forward with Richter or Alucard or Carrie Fernandez even. Remember that crappy little orphan girl from the Castlevania 64 games? Anyone but Cartoon Simon will suffice. Finally, we'll round off this little retrospective nightmare by addressing Princess Lana, Kevin's longtime love interest. She's still rocking that princess title after all these years. I'd age her horribly, make her nowhere near as cute as she used to be, just to see where Kevin's true motivations lie. Were his past heroics simply a means to sex, or was he truly a noble guy, fighting evil because it needed to be fought? Would Mario still risk his neck to save Peach from Bowser if Peach was built like Wario? Who knows, but that's the kind of drama I'd inject into my Captain N revival show on a weekly basis. And how's this for a pilot episode plotline? There's trouble brewing in Little Samson land, but Kevin's unfamiliar with the game. He can't play and practice it because it's ungodly expensive. Does he charge in blind? Or emulate Little Samson and risk losing all his retro street cred? Anyway, that's my idea for a Captain N revival show. I know it's a flimsy proposal, but I'm not going to put any serious effort into a project that'll never really get made. I was just wasting a little time on YouTube, crafting an unrefined piece of fan fiction for your consumption. Hopefully you found a little entertainment value in this video. If so, please toss me a like, comment, subscribe, and be on the lookout for more Access Branden episodes in the near future. Thanks for watching. Later.